Hi, my name is Lauren Dreyer, and I wanted to share my story as learning that I had ADHD and what that looked like for me. Um, it was interesting. I grew up a very happy kid, and I used to be described as like just happy go lucky, which is fantastic. Yes, I had a lot of anxiety, which I didn't know, nor did I know um, how to articulate it. I didn't know how to deal with it, didn't know what it was, and I didn't really know anything about that until probably the end of high school. I was always a daydreamer. And I didn't know that about myself. I'd be, sitting in school trying to pay attention, and my mind would be completely elsewhere. I was not paying attention. And then by the time I had to do any homework or take a test, it wasn't good. And I would always get the paper test and I'd be blank. Be like, I don't know any of this. I didn't know how to study, um, anything. I really did not know how I learned. And when I was, especially in elementary school, middle school, it was all by old school overhead projectors and at the beginning chalkboards, later on whiteboards. And you can write things down on those things all day, but that's not how I learn. I had a really hard time in school because of that. I didn't learn from the books or any of that stuff. I did, however, I was athletic. I was always in sports, anything from I played competitive softball growing up, a little bit of soccer, tiny bit of basketball, until high school, where I really fell in love with track and cross country. And, that was probably my saving grace because by the end of the day, I'd be like just kind of done and, going through the day. And then I would get to go and um, I'd get to go run. I would get to go be crazy and get that exercise in, get those endorphins going so that I was like all fine and great by the time I got home. And so that was all fine. Now, I does not to say I did not have a hard time in high school. I had to work my butt off. I am not one of those ADHDers who, um, you know, skated by in high school and, got straight A's, didn't really have to work at all. That was not me. I had to work my butt off. Um, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why it was seemingly so easy for everybody else and not me. But at that time, like I didn't even think to ask questions. I just like, okay, I'm observing basically. Then we go to college, and college was hard. It was hard without, the structure of being home, the stru not having the structure of being around people who kept me on track. And my world flipped upside down along with, I was always overwhelmed. My time, my task management was essentially non-existent, even though I didn't know that. I thought I was doing a pretty good job. And it was really cool how, I could pick when and where I wanted to do things. And, I was always a people pleaser. So I wanted to get things done. I did my homework, but um, it was hard. And especially kind of still not knowing how I needed to learn, and especially being in college where, they make you go through some of the more general education classes, which I did not care about. So yeah, my world flipped upside down along with that overwhelm, time and task management, and a lot of other things, honestly. Finally, end of my sophomore year of college, I found a major that I enjoyed. And like that was huge. I I was interested in the classes. Like even if it wasn't something I was going to be planning to personally deal with on a daily basis, I enjoyed the subject matters, the topics they were talking about. Um, that made a huge difference. Like I still didn't get a lot from the reading, although I could do it better. Did I doze off all the time? Um, but I like the subject matter better. And I had, instead of a ton of tests, I had to write a lot of papers, which was much more up my alley because I could gradually work on those projects. I could gradually do those things in spurts. It wasn't just completely just study for this and then test you on every single thing to where I would get the test. Very few did I get a test and just like completely blank out because I was interested in it. Now, I already had the test anxiety, so, just getting the test in my hand made me go into a little bit of freeze mode, which is not great. But yes, the subject matter and enjoying what I was doing made an absolutely huge difference. Then life after college came along, and there was getting a job and getting married and starting a family, all of that. And then, like, boom, it just like hit me in the face, and I could not function. Like, I got like, I went to work. I was always like on time and did that because my anxiety needed me to get there early. I was so anxious and did not want to clock in or be there late and not knowing what was going to happen with traffic and everything else and knowing how far I had to walk in to get to where my desk was. I've always been early because of the anxiety. Um, But yeah, I couldn't function very well. Like getting groceries, cleaning the house, or just like keeping things as clean in general. Um, and it made me start getting overly anxious and angry. And I didn't understand why I was angry because I'd never really been angry before. And so that in itself was bugging me. I wasn't really enjoying any of the jobs. Like it was just okay, here's a job to get me to the next point. It wasn't really something I was enjoying, and it always felt like I was just doing this to get to the next point, which I didn't really like because I wanted to do something that I enjoyed going to, not just like, hey, clock in, clock out, get a paycheck. Um, and I couldn't understand why I was all of a sudden like that angry. I was snapping all over the place and yelling, and that's just not me. And I couldn't understand why I could really not like get myself to complete the smallest and simplest tasks that I knew were not that hard, but I hated it. And it got to the point where I had been asked by a couple of different people, totally unrelated, if I had ADHD. And of course, I'm like, no, I don't. I'm not bouncing off the walls. I can concentrate and I can do all those things. And those people were just kind of like, okay, thinking like, okay, well, like you'll figure it out at some point. And then one day I was listening to somebody else talk about how their ADHD presented in them. And it was like that like out of body experience thing where I'm like, oh my God, that's me. Like all of that. And like things suddenly made sense. So then I started like doing like a, generic Google search of like, okay, what can this look like? And I was like, yep, 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 all these things. And finally I was like, oh my gosh, I think I have this. And of course, um, when I voiced that to a couple of people, they're like, I think you're overthinking it. I'm like, I don't know. I think there's something to this. So after, going through all the insurance and stuff and who's in my network, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I was like, I made an appointment with the psychiatrist and I was like, I'm going to go in person and I'm gonna figure it out if I do have this ADHD thing. And I tell you what, within 15 minutes of sitting down, and of course, they have to be like, okay, why are you here today? And after going through my spiel, and then the psychiatrist asking um, you know, his set of questions, and he goes, all right, well, from what you've talked about and how you've answered these questions, and just like your reaction, he goes, I would say there's a pretty solid possibility that you absolutely have ADHD and that your anxiety has actually probably masked it and covered it up for a lot of your life. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So, I went through a handful of more appointments doing some of the assessment tools um, that, really go over how your brain thinks and how your thought process works and your processing speed, all of that kind of stuff. And after that, he was like, well, here's the results. Yeah, I'd say you're pretty solid on the like absolutely have ADHD. And that was in my early 30s. And so you can imagine me looking back at the rest of my life being like all these dots start connecting and like tiny little things. All of a sudden, we're like, okay, this is explained. This makes sense. Like, this is why, this is why. And it really was. It was almost like I'd met myself or who like I actually was for the first time. And as um as much as that was like such an affirming thing of like, yes, I was right. I figured out like this thing about me, but it also led to like this, oh my gosh, what don't I know? What what about this? What about this? What about this? And like all of a sudden it was like this fire hose of just like information and how do I function and why this, why that. And it was very, very overwhelming. And so since then, I honestly have become such just a like I want to know all the things, typical ADHD. And now I'm like, oh, I know why I have all of the different interests. I know um, why I get bored with things and then just like can't make myself go back to it. Um, my piece makes sense. Um, and I figured out that there are subtypes of ADHD. And, the very known kind of characteristics of ADHD are very much in the hyperactive. And that is not all me. I figured out that I am a combination of ADHD, combination of inattentive and hyperactive, but I am very, very hyperactive internally. So, like, my brain's always going 1,000 miles an hour. You can tell that I talk really fast, and every once in a while, like, I'll be very externally hyperactive and like trying to get things done when I get in my hyper focus mode. But like, if it's something that I enjoy, I um, completely lose track of time, and I get so sucked into it. And there's so many just tiny little things and I do not have the OCD piece that makes me need to be like highly like organized. Everything has its place. I actually have a little bit of my organized clutter, as I like to call it. And if I do not have things sitting out to where I can see them, it's not getting done. Um, there's a lot of different intricacies and different things, and the lifetime of everything else very much contributes to how all of these things present in me. And it's very interesting. Not to say that obviously there is not a cure. Like it is just like part of me. It's part of how I work. But understanding why it is the way that I am and how I work has been so freeing. And like, okay, like I can't like fix this and right now anymore, nor would I want to. But it's very empowering to understand how you work and why you work the way that you do so that you can figure out um, what systems and uh, different tools you need to be able to function and to be able to help with the things that you may not be so great at. Um, I I'm a huge bookworm. Don't put something in front of me that I don't care about, subject matters that I don't care about because I can't force myself to read it. But if I love the subject matter, like I can read for forever. Um, I'm a huge bookworm. I love to get into some research and love learning new things. I love having the deep conversations and learning about people and why they are the way that they are. And all of these things have slowly helped me connect the dots in how I work, how my husband works, how we work together, along with our kids, who my whole family has ADHD. It's very interesting. But it really has. And it's been just as challenging and just as much of a struggle as it has been rewarding and empowering. There are so many things on a daily basis that frustrate me about ADHD and figuring out how to function in the world. And it really is a journey every single day, as exhausting as that sounds. But focusing and learning and figuring out all the ways that I can be helpful, being creative and enjoying being innovative and being able to see things different, they make so many things worth it and they make all of the crap worth all of the reward. And not that it's funny, but I have learned to laugh at myself and to make light of the things that I don't do so well, my weaknesses or um, my ADHD traits that I'm like, well, I got to do it now or else I will not remember to do it. Like I make light of it because I can't do anything about it. So I might as well, laugh about myself a little bit, not in a degrading way, but in a like, what you gonna do kind of thing. And because I absolutely refuse to let my weaknesses have power over me, not that they aren't there, but I'm like, yeah, okay, that's not what I'm great at, and that's fine. And I've accepted them. And because I have accepted that those things are part of me, that's how I am. I don't, I, I've been very intentional about putting tools and systems in place where I need them to help me be able to function on a daily basis and be able to take care of myself and my family. Um, and then, some of those absolutely include some AI. Like AI and technology have saved my life in a lot of different ways. Other times it is people and different places. And I have very much made a very complex support system that works for me, but I also set boundaries where I need them so that I I don't find myself in a spot where I'm not doing good or I'm about to lose it. And don't get me wrong. My imposter syndrome and my rejection sensitivity, aka RSD, they get the best of me some days. But I've figured out where, for the most part, those stem from and why I do them. And they don't cripple my confidence anymore because I'm like, yeah, okay, like I know this about myself, and not that I enjoy them, not that I'm necessarily proud of them, but it is what it is. And so, that's kind of one thing where, okay, I admit fault. Yeah. Like I did this wrong or I didn't get this done. Let's move on because there's really no point in stewing about it. So yeah, hopefully you relate to this. Hopefully this helps, but um wanted to share it because I I've become a big believer in not wanting people to feel alone in this because um, ADHD can be very, very isolating, and you can be surrounded by people and feel like you are all alone, and that is a terrible feeling. So I hope this helps, and good luck.